I want to talk to you about how to promote freedom around the world and how not to. I've noticed that there are many people that are concerned with freedom around the world, and this concern leads them to supplant the right principle with this idea that we need to promote freedom around the world. What's the right principle? The right principle is all policies have to be judged based on whether they protect the rights of American citizens. It's like Thomas Jefferson said in the Declaration of Independence. To secure these rights, governments are constituted. The only proper function of the government is to protect the rights of the individual citizens of the United States. It has nothing to do with promoting freedom around the world, liberating and protecting foreigners. It has nothing to do with this sports mentality that many people have, which is team freedom versus team tyranny. How many dictators can we bring down? Each time we bring down a dictator, we win a point. No, that is not the proper function of the federal government. It's not what the Constitution says. We need to lead the promotion of freedom in a different way, not by intervening in other countries, not by intimidating them, not by leaning on them, but by getting our own house in order, by being an example of what happens when you have freedom, when the individual rights of the citizens are protected. The great benefits of freedom will be shown when we go back to the original model, which is a limited constitutional republic where people are free. So this is what I want to talk about. Lead by example, not by intimidation. And the reason why I want to talk about it is because I see that in all these misguided foreign policies is a mentality of, it's kind of like a sports mentality. Team freedom versus team tyranny. If we knock off a dictator, we win a point. But this is not our responsibility. Now, individual citizens can, in their own capacity, go anywhere in the world, and they should be free to do so, and support whatever causes they prefer. But what they're doing is they're subverting the proper function of the federal government and thereby undermining freedom here at home. So let me give you a few examples of how this works. In the latest issue about the Cuba-US relations and the normalization, getting rid of the embargo, many people are focused on what the policy will do to the Fidel Castro or his brother's regime, the horrible communist tyranny that they have in Cuba. That's not the issue. And this seems to cloud people's minds so they can't even think straight. People that are usually committed to protecting the individual rights of the citizens are quite happy to prevent their own citizens from buying and selling things in Cuba, prevent their own citizens from traveling to Cuba or investing in Cuba. In other words, they're quite happy to violate the rights of American citizens. That's what they should have the focus on, and they don't. So, for example, a person like Senator Rubio will say, will be focused on how this embargo affects the Cuban government, as opposed to how it affects the freedom and the rights of the people here in America. So he goes to such an extent, his hate and his antipathy to the Cuban government is so great, it clouds his mind. And even with presenting the obvious fact that this embargo did not get rid of the dictatorship for 55 years, well, he doesn't seem to care. What's his excuse? He says, well, the embargo wasn't perfect. It had too many holes. If we had had a more perfect embargo, it might have worked. No, by punishing the people in Cuba by not being able to treat freely with Americans and punishing the American citizens with what he should be thinking about, he is not looking at it properly, and it's never going to get rid of a dictatorship. As we know, dictatorships can continue decade after decade, even though the people suffer tremendously. Communism is a horrible system, and the way to get rid of it is by leading with a shiny, pristine example of the prosperity and happiness that is brought to the people who live under a limited government where there is freedom, where their rights are protected. Other examples are all this attacking and getting involved with ISIS. These people are not a threat to us. The proper function is to protect the citizens if there's an attack or there's an imminent threat of attack. ISIS, neither have they attacked the homeland, nor is there an imminent threat of attack, but yet many people, maybe even a majority, want to get involved. They want to intervene because ISIS is a horrible group of people and they believe in tyranny and dictatorship. So what? That's not our responsibility. The point is, we need to focus on the rights of the citizens here in America that have to finance that war with ISIS, that have to lose their lives, the young men and women that go over there and die for nothing, like they did in Iraq. All these people were sacrificed. Why? Because we were supposed to liberate and protect foreigners? That is not the federal responsibility, federal government's responsibility. What the federal government has to do is focus on its limited function, which is it is performing very badly. And by the way, if we had the proper foreign policy, in other words, we were not intervening militarily in all these countries and trying to make sure that these terrorists didn't have a safe haven. Look, if they don't have a safe haven in one place, they'll have a safe haven in another. But if we had the right policy, there wouldn't be any terrorist attacks here in America. The reason why the terrorists attack the United States is because we are intervening on the side against them in their foreign wars, not in our wars. ISIS is in a war with Syria and Iraq. That's their problem, not our problem. And since we intervene, the only way they can think of in a misguided way, because terrorism is always stupid and immoral, is by doing terrorist acts to the few stupid people that get themselves involved in their wars, that go all the way over there, thousands of miles over there, to find out what's going on. They catch them and then they sacrifice them. So if your big worry is to get rid of terrorism here in America and to reduce the risk of terrorism in America, a foreign policy, a non-interventionist foreign policy would do the trick. And what did a lot of people say? Oh, we're going to let them win? This is not a game. It's about what is the proper system and what isn't. And we are involved in all these disputes around the world, policemen of the world, unpaid and unappreciated. Everybody hates us for being the policemen of the world. It is downside every way which you look at it. It's absolutely ridiculous and it makes no sense. Now, what should we do to promote freedom in the rest of the world? Well, it just so happens that it's in our own self-interest and to follow the Constitution, to protect the individual rights of the citizens. And here's a little short list. First of all, we need to get rid of government lawlessness. Government lawlessness by Obama, previously by Bush, is a disaster. Without rule of law, you cannot reap the rewards of freedom. That's the problem with dictators and emperors and kings. They don't follow the rule of law. In order to have prosperity and freedom, you need to follow the rule of law. Now, here are some easy examples of government lawlessness, which is the worst. They violated our rights with those by spying on American citizens, with the NSA secretly spying on all the American citizens. That's obviously a violation of our rights. And Obamacare, Obama changes the law. He's not the Congress, but he has assumed the prerogatives of the Congress, and he thinks he can legislate as the president. That's going to destroy our constitutional system. This is total lawlessness. The same thing happened with immigration. Immigration policy was in place. He wants to change it from the presidency. He admitted that that was wrong, but he did it anyway. He's a constitutional professor, and he doesn't know the basic principle of separation of powers, and that the president doesn't legislate, and he can't legislate if he's not happy with what the Congress is doing or not doing. My goodness, this is horrible. A good interview that I did on this subject was with a constitutionalist scholar, Bruce Fine. Take a look at that if you want to get into the details. What else can we do? Well, we have to derogate all these laws that are violating American rights. So all these victimless crime laws, like the laws against drugs, people should be free to ingest whatever material or liquid they want to. It's nobody else's business. And what else? Well, sex. The government is intervening, say, a lady wants to sell sex for X amount of money. Well, that's her business and the business of the customer. What difference does it make to anybody else? Nobody's rights are being violated. So it's not something the government should intervene with. It's a victimless crime. The most absurd thing is the law against suicide. I mean, if you want to kill yourself, that's your own business. Why? What business is it of the government? So all these victimless crimes, get rid of those. That would help. Secondly, stop all this redistribution of wealth. Respect the property rights of the people that earned the money and went to work and produced the money. It's okay to tax them to protect them, but not to give free goods and services to other people, to other countries, to special interest groups. This is not the proper function of the government. The proper function of the government has to be limited. It's a limited government, strictly to protecting the individual rights of the citizens. So that would help plenty. If we just got rid of all that redistribution of wealth, then there would be extreme prosperity here in America, and everybody would see how great it is to live in America. Another example, the embargo I just talked about. This embargo is violating the rights of the American citizens. Get rid of that embargo and do it constitutionally by going to the Congress. Foreign wars. Now that's one of the worst, because you force these kids, these young men and women, to go to another country, not to defend our country, not to defend freedom here, but to liberate and protect somebody else. That's their problem. This expanded function of the federal government undermines the protection of the individual rights of the citizens here in America. So to sum up, what we need to do is lead by example, get our own house in order, and not try to lead by intimidation and intervention all around the world. That's a losing strategy, and it'll never work, and it's got away from our fundamental principles and that our country was founded on, and that produced the great prosperity that we have. The reason why we have this great prosperity is because we started on the right track. We started with the right principles. To the extent that we deviate from these principles, we're dead. Tell me what you think.